Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Harrison from ATGN here, doing a deck building tutorial for Final War. For those of you who've missed our previous coverage, Final War is the first game to be produced by Games Lab, an Australian owned and based company. Final War blends elements of TCG and RPG gameplay for a unique and enjoyable gameplay experience. For deck building in Final War, the first and most important decision you have to make is which Warlord you're going to use to represent yourself. The three Warlords currently available are all here in front of us now. There's Tharis the Forest Lord from the Good Elf faction, Shadrach the Unseen from the neutral Guildmaster faction, and Fangris the Terrible from the chaotic Werewolf faction. There are plans for 6 new Warlords, 2 for each faction, to be released at PAX 2017, however at the moment we only have 3 options. For those of you familiar with the Commander format in Magic the Gathering, they act very similar to what your Commander does, where you're allowed to only use cards from that faction alongside neutral cards. During the course of your deck building, you may have any number of copies of common and uncommon cards. The downside to that is that the commons and uncommons are usually quite underpowered compared to rares and above, a system that's pretty similar to anyone who has played Magic the Gathering. During the course of your deck building, you may only use 1 copy of a rare of above in each of your decks. This does run into the unfortunate situation once you start building a collection of having lots of copies of a rare that you really can't do much with. There are plans for when the new Warlords to be released for those to be usable, but right now we are unfortunately stuck with them. During the course of the game, you are very heavily rewarded for having those higher rarities. As you can see, for no additional cost, the legendaries and above are much more useful than the commons and uncommons, giving you stronger stats and additional abilities. During the course of your deck building, you will be required to make a 50 card, no more and no less, deck for Final War. There are 6 different card types that you can use to build your deck. The first and arguably most important is the unit. Units go in the front row of your board and are used to attack and defend during combat. Again, you are very heavily rewarded for having higher rarities of units as opposed to the lower ones. However, there are some niche cases where they are more useful. For your 50 card deck, I would recommend having between 20 and 25 of the units. The second most important is the hero. The heroes go in the second row and support your Warlord. Heroes can be involved in combat, but are also used to make your units better. For your heroes, I would recommend having between 10 and 15 in your 50 card deck. You also have access to items during the course of your game. The items are attached to your heroes and warlords and provide them with benefits both in and out of combat. For the items, I would recommend between 5 and 10. The fourth card type is the fortification. Fortifications go sideways in the very back row and are used to support the column in front of them. Fortifications can be very powerful, providing you with defense buffs in combat to make you more survivable, as well as healing and manipulating combat. Fortifications, I would recommend about 5 of them in your deck. The final 2 card types are powers and spells. Powers and spells act very similarly to instants and sorceries in Magic the Gathering, where they're used to influence the board immediately. The difference between the 2 of them is that spells require you to have a caster of the appropriate type on the board. There are 7 different schools of magic that the spells belong to, which is again a throwback to the old D&D magic system. Powers, however, do not require you to have any sort of caster for them. Powers and spells would be considered pretty much in the same category, and you'll want between 10 and 15 of them in your deck, making sure that you always have the appropriate caster. So that's about it for the deck building, so we're going to jump straight into a game between the chaotic werewolf and the neutral guildmaster factions.